Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have so much fun today because we're going back to my roots and talking about marketing. That really is what I started doing 20-ish years ago. It's kind of like, we remove dates from things now. So we'll just say ish. But please join me in welcoming B. Zachary Bennett to our program today. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Perfect. Okay, so first, do I call you B or do I call you Zachary?
Just Zachary is perfectly fine.
I love it.
I get that question quite a bit. What does the B stand for?
Yes, what does the B stand for?
Well, I kind of look at it in like a branding way. Okay. Michael J. Fox, the J didn't stand for anything.
Right.
Well, B does stand for something, but I use it for the same reason he did. If you Google Zachary Bennett, which is what you can call me, just call me Zachary. But if you Google that, you're going to get a Canadian actor. He's much younger than I am, and I'm not him. So if you want to find me, you have to Google B. Zachary Bennett. Then I show up all over the internet.
Perfect.
That's why I have to stick my first initial in there, because otherwise I'm Canadian.
Right. Marketing tip right there. You've got to be able to be found. And we'll talk about that more later. But yeah, it's just I love that. A lot of people have the initial there because it was a parent or something like that, and then they don't want to be called Junior, so they go by their middle name.
Well, it seems to really throw people off. It's like middle initials are accepted, but first initials, everybody questions it.
Right. Well, I tell you, I look at it and I go, yeah, you're just cheating the alphabetical system.
You remember Yellow Pages?
Yes, I know. Where everybody was aardvark or So cool. Okay, we're giving away our age now.
I have 20-ish years of my career as well. So
I know. We're just going to stick with ish. We like that. Well, speaking of your 20-ish year career, tell us how you got to where you are today and how you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Well, that's actually can be quite a long story. I started off my career really as a recording artist, as a musician.
Okay.
I wrote songs, released records, that sort of thing. I had my own independent record label.
Wow.
And then when I decided to start a family, I put those creative talents to use in corporate America, because a lot of it's the same.
Right.
Creative is creative, and managing a band and a band's image is very similar to managing a brand for a company. So, I ended up going into I worked at several big agencies over the years, worked with several Fortune 500 companies that people have all heard the name of. And then, once I settled down and decided to have a family, I looked around. I had 2 young children, and I was traveling 3 and 4 days out of the year, out of the week, out of the year, I wish, out of the week. So I wanted to stay home, watch them grow up, because that's why we have children.
Right.
So I decided to start my own agency. That was actually prompted by a call. I got a call into my office one day with this small business company that wanted to work with us. Well, when you're a smaller company and most of my clients are these big Fortune 500 mammoths, it's kind of hard for them to compete budgetarily on the same level. But I thought to myself, hey, there's a niche here. If I can work with these smaller companies, then maybe I can stay home more and not travel across the coast, coast to coast all the time. So that's what I did. I started my own agency serving, smaller to regional sized businesses as opposed to the huge ones, and started getting my feet wet that way. And one of the things that I noticed, interestingly enough, when going from these huge companies to smaller companies is, when you're dealing with Bank of America, your contact is the VP of marketing.
Right.
They have a degree in marketing. They understand how marketing works. When you go to these smaller companies, they don't know how marketing works.
Right.
They understand, I make a widget, I make a very good widget, and that's what I do. So I ended up spending a lot of my time educating people on the way that marketing is supposed to go, because they just don't know. And actually, they shouldn't have to know. That's why there's people like me.
Right. They need to focus on their widgets.
Absolutely. So, but they need to know enough to be comfortable. So I spent a lot of time doing education. I started doing speaking engagements, and I'm a regular speaker for the SBA, Chambers of Commerce, SCORE, SBDC, different, whoever wants to speak, I come. It's one of the ways that I serve the business community. And out of that, people started asking me, hey, do you have a book? Do you have a book? Evidently, that's a prerequisite for a speaker.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We've all heard that. You must have a book.
So, I was talking to my wife one day, and she was like, you really should think about doing that. And so, it was asked for, but she was really the catalyst that got me to doing.
You're a wise man. When your wife says do something, you're like, yes, honey.
Well, the fact that the world shut down for COVID kind of gave me time to do it. So
you really weren't traveling then.
Yeah. So, I spent a good amount of time, wrote down a lot of my thoughts that way, tried to find a different angle. There's tons of business books out there. So tried to find something that was packaged in a unique way that people could understand different, that really had, like you said, passion in it.
Right.
That's really what it's about. Serving the business community is something, because I've worked with the big guys, I value smaller businesses, and really a lot of their innocence that's there too. But a lot of people get taken advantage of. And so, that raises the hair on the back of my neck, and I'll, bear up against people when they do that. So I fiercely protect small business now.
Great. I love it. Yeah. And it's funny, as you were talking, I realized I didn't read your bio. We just leaped right into this. Now, I'm not going to read the bio because you covered quite a bit of it.
Sure.
But, when you mention the companies you've worked with, it is the big guys. It's Bank of America. It's The Limited. It's Victoria's Secret, Lowe's, Home Improvement, Campbell Foods, and even more. You've got your own podcast, which we'll talk about, and the company that you founded. And I love this, the name of your company, and I just lost it. Where is the name of your company? We're just going to have a great time today.
It's Reformation Productions.
Yes. And so tell us, so that name, say it again, and then tell us how you came about that name, because that is part of the branding process.
Sure. It's Reformation Productions. And actually, I get asked this, and it's not as interesting a story as people would think, but it actually started back when I was a musician. It was my band name was Reformation.
Oh, okay.
So it was The Reformation was my band. And then, I left that. I started working in marketing agencies, and I had a client that wanted me to write music for them. And so, I had to be able to bill them separately from the agency, because the agency didn't write music. So they kind of sublet that out to me. It was Campbell Foods. And so I had to, come up with a name for them to write the check out to. So it was Reformation Productions was the company name that I used. And then when I decided to go off on my own, I already had that established as a business. And so that's what we went with. Now, I tell people now, that's the truth behind how it came about. But the justification for it is we help people reform the way that they think about business and the way that they do things. Because a lot of times people come to me, they've been doing it this way, and it just hasn't been correct. So we literally have to change the way that they think, very much like, Martin Luther and the Reformation movement. So that's kind of how I've tied it in with more meaning for the business community, but it didn't start that way.
I love it. I love it. Well, you mentioned that your lovely wife said, "Hey, write this book," and you did. It's called, and play Vanna. Let us see what it looks like. Married to Marketing: A Relationship Guide to Business. And I love that title and the concept. And it is a great book. One of the things that you talk about is it's a quick read, and it is. Business people are very busy. They need that high level, of expertise. But how did you come up with the concept that it's married to marketing?
Well, the idea behind it is to really make it where people can understand marketing. Marketing can be very confusing to people that aren't educated in it, and it's scary for a lot of business owners because business owners they like to keep their money close to their chest. Marketing is something that every business has to have an expense item for, right? So it's scary for people, kind of like a lawyer is. And so I try to make it relatable for people as much as I can. And so I use the romantic relationship as a comparison, like a parallel to the business relationships, because your business and your consumer relationship is not far off from the husband and wife relationship. You go through and you first off, you have to prepare yourself when you're super young. And then you go through courtship, you go through an engagement period, then you get married and you try to live happily ever after. All businesses want to do is find their best audience and live happily ever after. So I kind of use that analogy to walk people through not only what marketing is, but how we do it, how we go about it, using that parallel as a way that they can relate to. Because a lot of people, they don't understand, high corporate jargon and all of that, but everybody understands boy meets girl, right? So that's kind of the path that I went down with this, and kind of talk about the relationship building using something most people can relate to.
Right. And I love the book. I thought that the concept was great because it did make it easy to understand. The little light bulbs went off because, as you said, we're used to relationships, whatever your relationship is. I mean, and you did take a traditional aspect in the, approach, in the fact that, there is that courtship, there's, all of those, it's not really internet dating. I mean, all of those various things. But, I love the fact that it really is a process, and what happens frequently with small business owners or big business owners is we skip steps.
Yes.
And one of my favorite parts in your book was where you talk about the fact that, we think we as the business owner have the greatest widget in the world. And, and then, oh my gosh, nobody buys our widget. So, kind of walk us through some of the mistakes that we might be making when we're doing that.
Well, the to your widget story, you can make the best widget in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then it's your hobby. It's not a business.
Right.
So, understanding the steps that you go through, and a lot of times taking advice from your friends is not good.
Right.
Because your friends generally don't know business unless you're friends with somebody that's, C-suite, understands how business works. But a lot of the mistakes that I hear is people get cold feet with spending money. Everybody's heard you have to spend money to make money. It's been a cliche for as long as I've been alive. But where to spend that money? Somehow there's a confusion with people as to what marketing is. And the reason why that happened is because somewhere back in the 70s, businesses started shying away from the word sales.
Right. We all went, ew, I don't want to be in sales.
Sales, you had the used car salesman that took advantage of people. So companies started merging the two and calling it marketing and sales. Well, marketing and sales are not the same thing.
Right.
They sleep in the same house.
Yes, they coexist.
Yeah. But because of that, it started to dilute what marketing meant. And so people are just generally confused as all it means is communicating your business to the public. That's what marketing means. Right. Taking your product to the market, marketing. And there's a very scientific way to go about doing that's been perfected by, these huge mammoth companies over the years that smaller businesses just don't understand. They just
Right.
don't.
Mhm.
So walking through that process, doing it all correctly is something that is a must if you want it to be as good as they are.
Right.
Because they know that. They know the process, and everybody uses the process because it works. Small businesses try to skip it because they don't want to take the time or they don't want to take the investment to do it properly.
Right.
And the problem is, if you don't do it properly, you fold your doors. I've seen many a business that they start off really strong, they make mistakes, and then they go under. I hate seeing businesses that fold.
Right.
But if you don't do it right, it may take a while, but that's what's going to happen. And so I try to walk them through, the best ways to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, and without, cutting corners. Most of my clients come to me when they've tried to do as much as they can on their own, and they finally realize that they need professional help.
Right.
So at that point, I say, okay, let's usually 9 times out of 10, let's go back
Right.
and fill in the holes that you left out. Because if you had done those, you wouldn't be in this position that you're in now. So, go back, fix the branding, figure out who they are. So many companies have no idea what their identity is. They're out there, they're making widgets, they're serving sandwiches, and they have no clue what their company's personality is. I'm like, well, you have to figure out that first. Otherwise, you're just like everybody else.
Right.
Right. So going through perfecting those steps, figuring out what they are, that's all the branding foundational stuff that most companies have to do before you ever get to tactics and strategy, right? So skipping those homework steps is probably the biggest mistakes that I see.
Right.
Because a lot of people literally come to me to fix that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes that I always see people make is the fact that they don't know who they are selling their product to. And I'm sure you hear this every time you say, now who is your target market? And they smile at you and they say, everyone. No, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. And I talk about this all the time on the program, because to me that if you don't know that, you're not going to do anything. I mean, you might sell, you might be even successful, but you could be more successful if you had a specific target market. And it's funny, there was a commercial on TV the other day where it was for hand lotion. And, and so it goes through this whole thing of, if you have dry skin, so kind of the question mark type of thing as to why you might need hand lotion. But, and I think it, was for sensitive skin. I mean, it was getting really pretty tight, but then it ended with whatever the name of the lotion was, is for everyone. And I went, no, because they just took it down and then went kaboom. And so, and that, of course, especially when you're starting out, we want to sell our widget to as many people as we can sell our widget to. Absolutely. So, being told, okay, you need to figure out those 100 people that are really going to be the best people for your widget, as opposed to the 10,000, right, or more. That's really hard for people.
It is. And that's why it's one of the exercises that we walk through, because it seems like it should be obvious. But if you've never studied people, it's hard to pull out what those traits are, right, and how they're different from other people, to zero in on what makes them tick. I tell people marketing is creativity, yes. Strategy, yes. But it's also psychology. We have to know how people tick. Right. What's going to influence them? How are we going to infiltrate their everyday lives in a way that's positive, so that we can give them what they actually need? I always tell companies, your job isn't to push your product on people. Your job is to find people that need your product and then be there. Well, you can't find them if you don't know who they are.
Right.
So yeah, one of the first pieces is studying who your target audience is going to be, so that you can be as smart and as efficient in your tactics as possible when you go after them.
Right.
The company that you were talking about, I don't know who it was, the skin lotion people. Everybody isn't really
right,
their target. Even though they said that. It's people with dry skin that can afford whatever their bottle is to begin with. Probably only in a certain part of the world. Right. There's lots of ways to narrow it down. And you have to narrow it down and figure out, okay, what does my target audience look like? And I literally on the whiteboard, I draw a picture.
Mhm.
This is, an example of
Mhm.
what your consumer profile, they call them personas now.
An avatar. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
But this is what they look like.
Mhm.
This is what makes them tick.
Mhm.
This is how we have to talk to them.
Mhm.
And then you just follow suit,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. I even tell people find a picture, of that avatar, that persona, and stick it to your computer monitor.
Yeah.
And then you're talking to them every time, and that, seems to, and you might actually have, a couple people there, but you're not going to have the global population, or even, everybody in your city or things like that. I mean, it really does help you to focus when you're like, okay, this is Bob. Bob buys my product. What am I telling Bob about my product? I'm not going to worry about Sue. Sue might buy it, but I'm not going to worry about her.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You have to figure out who people are, what makes them tick, speak to them. It's going to go outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you become really good at being the best friend to whoever your target actually is, then there's plenty of people in the world. You'll be set,
Right.
figuring out who they are, figuring out how to talk to them. And, a lot of marketing and advertising, for that matter, that's another thing. Marketing and advertising aren't the same thing. But a lot of that has to do with reflecting who your customer is when they look at you. If you are buying a house, realtors will stage the house. So it could be a completely empty house. They'll bring in furniture. The reason why they do that is it makes it easier for the buyer, the person that's coming in to look at the house, to imagine themselves sitting there.
And it's counterintuitive, because when I see
thing.
that gray couch, I'm thinking, but wait a minute, I have 2 blue chairs.
Right.
But it still helps you go, okay, the space,
Right.
it does help you conceptualize it.
Yep. Yeah, we do the same thing.
We lost your video.
Oh no.
Oh no. Still have audio though, so keep going.
All right, I'll turn it back on. I don't know how that happened.
Okay, we're back. Don't know what happened to your video, but it really is figuring out who we want to market to is the absolute most critical part of this. Because, and you talk about this in your book, the worst thing is to waste time and waste money.
Right.
And marketing is different than advertising, is different than PR, is different than sales, but they all do have to tie together. And business owners just don't always, and they don't understand that it all ties together.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. A lot of times what I do, and I do this because like I said, I do a lot of speaking engagements to educate people. And a lot of times I have questions about, okay, no, that's PR. No, that what you're talking about is advertising. Advertising is paid media.
Yes. And PR's not paid.
The other thing that I get is people, when you say branding, everybody knows the word branding now. It's a buzzword. But the vast majority of business owners still have no clue what that means. When I ask them what their brand is, they'll show me their logo. And I'm like, no, that's something that represents your brand, but it's not your brand. So we have to go through and educate them on, what are these things? And so there's a lot of elements that, it's one of the reasons why I do the education piece, is because while they don't have to know everything, they have to know enough to be successful and confident in what they're doing.
Right.
Because as much as I can tell businesses, this is what you should do, I can't make them do it.
Right.
It's like the old adage of, you can take the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I can tell you what to do all day long, but you have to have the passion, the drive to follow through. That's being a business owner is not easy. It's something that only a few people in our society are able to do.
Right.
It's a big responsibility. But I can't make you do it. I can guide you, but I can't make you do it.
Right.
And so, that's a big piece of it, as well as, finding what those right steps, being wise enough to have somebody that's an expert to help you walk along. But if you don't pull the trigger, there's nothing that expert can do.
Right. And it really does come back to some very basic things. One of the first things, we talked about the fact that, I've got this widget. I think it's the greatest widget in the world, and I'm going to sell gazillion widgets. well, nobody might actually want my widget. And that's what gets confused. And, you mentioned don't take, advice from your friends. Your friends are going to say, oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing in the world. I'd buy it. But, and then I still can't get over the fact that pet rocks made millions of dollars. Yes. They were rocks, and clearly anybody with, anywhere could be making our own pet rocks and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of those stupid things that you have no idea why it sells. And sometimes your widget might actually be the greatest thing in the world. But if, as you said, if people don't know it exists, if they don't know what it does, then it really doesn't matter. And so that is the tricky part, is figuring all of those things out. And where it's kind of like, we've given birth, we kind of back to this marriage analogy, we have this product, we put it out there in the world and we're so proud of it. And first of all, we can't fathom that not everyone in the world is not going to love this thing. And more importantly, we just assume that they will.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is people that create a project like a widget or service, either one, they think it's brilliant. They think it's wonderful because they understand it.
Right.
They don't understand that a lot of people don't. And the reason why the pet rock was successful is all about packaging. It's all about how it was marketed. And it doesn't matter how smart your widget is. If it's packaged poorly, it's not going to sell. You have to come across as a professional, or, it matter of fact, if you have an alternative target, then you have to be a rebel. You have to, whatever is going to fit. But if you're not packaged correctly, if your story doesn't resonate with the people that want to buy it, they're going to ignore you. Doesn't matter if it really is great, so that's, it has to go together. It has to be something that aligns with the people that are going to purchase it. In our lifetime, the way that marketing works has really changed. It started off, if you remember, when we were younger. I don't know how old you are, but
I'm older than you. I'll just tell you that.
Well, even I remember when you could actually have an advertising message that was simply buy my product. You were out there, you were telling people, the millennials and the iPhone generation, they don't want you telling them buy my product.
No.
You have to work your way into their life and become something that, oh yes, this makes sense. It is. You come at them with a hey, my product is great, you should buy it, they're going to ignore you.
In fact, they'll do the opposite. They're like, no way. And I'm going to tell my friends not to buy it either.
Yep. So it's a different world than it used to be. And a lot of business owners are older. They're, Gen X-ish, or maybe even a little older. And we have a certain way of thinking that the younger people, the people that buy things, it's not the same. So we have to learn to think outside of ourselves, and which is why the target customer is so important, like you were saying. We have to learn to think like they do.
Yes.
Learn to see things like they do, so that what we say is going to actually matter.
Right. And it does come back to that marriage analogy. You have to figure out who you want to date, who appeals to you. And of course, when we're first starting out, it's like anybody. It really, it is back to that. But then we figure out, no, here are certain characteristics that I value in a partner. And we start narrowing it down to hopefully just one person. We're just going to stick with that. And then you mentioned, the packaging. How are we presenting ourselves? Right. If the person that I'm attracted to, or is say a professional, very businesslike, then if I go in wearing my hippy dippy clothes, they're not even going to look at me. Right. Let's ignore that, superficially we're supposed to ignore all of that. But we do. I mean, we pay attention, right? Absolutely. Even if it's just, ooh, he wears a pink shirt. I mean, they could be the greatest person in the world, but if I'm not a fan of a pink shirt, then, that it goes from there. But yeah. And so it is all of that packaging and figuring out what is going to appeal to the person I want to date.
Right.
And then you mentioned in your book, we kind of, have to shift and meld a bit to meet their expectations without really changing ultimately who we are. And I think that's, obviously in relationships, we make those mistakes, but we also make those mistakes clearly in our products, right, where we're selling something that isn't, even if it's just, hey, I've got this great widget in the world, but you're going to have to wait a month to get it. No, people in this day and age, I wanted it yesterday. I wanted you to know I wanted it. And so all of those expectations and things have to be managed just like they do in dating and then a marriage.
Sure. And it's a two-way street. As much as the groom has to be attracted to the bride, if the bride doesn't want him, there's no marriage happening.
Not going to make it. Yeah.
So, and a lot of business owners think that the customers are just, people that do whatever they say, and they're not. You have to compromise. You have to meet in the middle for it to be successful. Otherwise, they're going to buy into your product, be disappointed, and then badmouth you. And how many times do we have wives clubs that do that? Right? Badmouth the husband. Yep. So that's something that we have to look out for and make concessions. This is a lot of, we talked about the newer generation. A lot of the newer generation, they want people that align with their thoughts and their philosophy.
Right.
So you have to decide to yourself, okay, what do I stand for? What am I willing to stake my business on that's going to align with other people? If it's going to alienate people, you might not want to make it a platform for yourself. You can still think it, but you don't want to step on it if it's going to alienate half of your audience.
Right. That's why I tell people, don't post about politics.
No. It's one of the maturity aspects of being a responsible business owner or an adult. When you're young, it doesn't matter what they look like or what kind of car they drive or what. I just want to be in love, which is great.
And we all did that, right?
You realize you're eating out of a can. Then all of a sudden your mind changes. So there's some reality that maturity that's involved, and you have to do what you have to do to be acceptable to other people. It's just it's a reality.
Right.
It's not the altruistic way that people think of it, but with maturity comes recognizing that sometimes you have to make hard choices.
Right. And then the tricky part though is you still have to be unique.
Yeah.
And in your book, you mentioned Coca-Cola. We're both here in Atlanta. This is where Coke is based.
Absolutely.
I'm a lifelong Coca-Cola drinker. If you give me a glass and one or two glasses, one has Coke, one has Pepsi, I can tell the difference every time. To me, they just taste very different. And of course, it's funny because down here, everything is, soda and it's really hard to go find Pepsi. I mean, but it's what, 20-ish years ago when Coke decided, and you talk about this in the book, that it wanted to be more like Pepsi. And so it came out with the new Coke. And we all went, yeah, because it was sweeter. I mean, that really is the difference between them, is Pepsi is a sweeter drink. Right. And we all went, and their, sales plummeted. And it was such a weird thing because I remember thinking they were doing really well. Why did they think they had to change? And then of course they went, okay. And they were smart enough to go, this didn't work. And so then we had classic Coke.
Right.
And I remember it said that on the cans, right? And and then pretty soon they went, okay, new Coke is just not going to sell, and so then we went back to just Coca-Cola.
But they slowly, without making an announcement, just kind of put those off the shelf.
Yeah. You couldn't buy them anymore, and because they didn't want to admit, oh, we screwed up. But it is one of those things where we trying to be like everybody else, they're just going to buy the other product. I mean, if you're trying to be sweet like Pepsi, then why not just buy Pepsi?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes chasing the competition is not the right answer. You have to be different. You have to be different. If you're not different, there's no reason for somebody to choose one over the other.
Right.
Except for price. Now, if you want to compete on price and be Kmart, you remember Kmart was the if you want to be that, there's an audience for you. But if you want to be a premium product, you don't want to be Kmart. You know, You have to figure out what's going to make you different. You were talking about Coca-Cola. Of course, we have the Coca-Cola Museum here. And I actually did on my podcast, I actually did an entire series studying the Coca-Cola brand from its very, very beginning.
And the museum is very cool.
It is. It is. I actually have shots from that in my episodes because my podcast is video as well. So, but yeah, you being from here, you might enjoy that. It goes through it all. Why did they do that? It's all listed there. I'm not going to go into it now because this is not a Coca-Cola show. But, but yeah, everybody makes mistakes. How they handle that mistake, that's where the brilliance comes in.
Right.
Because they made a mistake. Yes, it was a dumb idea to do that, but the way that they handled it opened up, retro products for the world.
Right. Oh yeah. Then things were classic. I mean, that really was the thing. We all went, ooh, we like classic.
Yep. And nowadays, there's a lot of things that you look for that you can't find. When Stranger Things came out, they actually did a limited production of New Coke because Stranger Things is set back in that time period.
Right.
So yeah, they had these little pop-up immersive experience events that Stranger Things did to promote their show. And at it, they had New Coke. It's the first time I had New Coke in a long time. And you know what? It tastes just like Pepsi.
Yeah, it's just sweeter. I mean, that's the thing. And one of the things that I discovered, and I've been to the Coke Museum several times. I mean, I love their advertising area. I mean, that's very cool. But they do make it very differently in different countries. Yes. And like the one, and that's because people just have different tastes. And so they weren't trying again to force Coke on people the way that the brand that we have here. I mean, it's still Coke and or whatever the brand is, but like they've got the orange version, they've got all sorts of different things. And if you go, I mean, you've done this, I've done this, you get to taste those other things, and some of them were like, but it's what appeals in that country, and so again, it is like the marriage. It's like, okay, you don't like me like this, so I'm going to be like this. And I'm okay with being like that. I mean, that's the other thing is if you're kind of making a change, you have to be fine with making that change. The big word that we hear over and over and over again is authentic. You still have to be authentic to yourself. So, okay, so I can be this in one country and this in another country, and I'm cool with it.
Right. Well, you talk about the other countries. I have clients that are international and they deal with other other countries. And one of the things that, because I have, a history with Fortune 500 companies that also had locations that were overseas. And like that. One of the things that I've realized is that you have to speak the language and the culture of where you're going to advertise. I had, I'm not going to say who it was, but one of the companies I represented several years ago was opening up a location in Shanghai. And, obviously a lot different than here. Well, in order to advertise effectively in that culture, you have to understand what that culture deems acceptable,
right?
And what they don't. And there's a lot of things that we think over here that the rest of the world doesn't think. So you have to do your research. You have to understand the culture that you're going to be advertising. And that even goes not only, overseas, but that's what you can advertise here in Georgia is different than California sometimes. Right. So you have to understand the people that you're talking to. It all goes back to that target audience and understanding them, speaking their language. And, Coca-Cola has done the same thing. Like you mentioned, and one of the things that I looked at is recently I had a client that's trying to recruit people to attend classes online, virtually. Since COVID happened, a lot of education is online. And one of the things that they wanted to do was mirror their classes that they already have online in the same time frame. And I'm like, okay, well, 9 o'clock in the morning here is 6 o'clock in the morning in India. Well, if you're going to India, you're going to run over their dinner time. So then I thought, well, what time do they eat dinner in India?
Right. Well, they might not eat at 6.
They don't. They eat between 8 and midnight. Which is completely different than here. They have lunch between 1 and 4. So, but if I didn't look that up, I wouldn't have known that. We would have made mistakes and wasted money.
Right.
I'm very big against wasting money.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah. And it does, if like you said, it takes research. Even things like colors to use, words to use. I mean, all of those various things. And and of course, it's even in the US. I mean, we have 4 time zones. So that's always, especially like with all the Zooms that we've been doing, right? It's like, okay, well, it's lunchtime for me. And my California friends are like, and then somebody else says, well, let's do it at 6 p.m. I'm like, wait a minute, is that 9 for me? Or is that,
Right.
And so it makes it difficult to figure those things out. But it's just part of doing business. I mean, again, if you want to be successful, you research those things. Back to the marriage thing, what does your partner like? If they like going antiquing on the weekends and it's something that you think, yeah, then back to what you said, compromise. Okay, we'll go antiquing one weekend, but the next weekend, hey, let's do something that I like. And, and hopefully then it works out. But there are obviously times when companies make big changes. Sometimes they have to. I mean, you talk about in your book companies that had major things go wrong. And so they literally changed their names. They did all sorts of things. But it's been interesting, and especially because of who you've worked for. It was, I think, last week where Victoria's Secret announced that they're going to do away with the wings and all of that. And I mean, clearly Victoria's Secret has very specific brand that they are targeting. I mean, it's young women who wear a size 0, which is, and the interesting thing is they are, I think, discovering that their market's getting older, and we're certainly not a size 0, but they're not embracing what is happening with culture especially in the United States, where, companies like, say, Dove, because I think Dove was one of the first ones that did this, started showing, I love it. They call them plus size models. I'm like, no, those are average size people.
They're normal people.
Yes, and so, but yeah, when Dove, Target does it too. Some of those companies, when they started showing people that looked like me, that looked like my neighbor, looked like my friends, I'm like, oh, okay. And so it's kind of interesting to see how Victoria's Secret is maybe kind of sort of coming into this century.
Yeah. We did the same thing when I worked with them, is when we came out with Pink. And the whole idea with Pink was we had the older sophisticated woman product, which was Victoria's Secret. We wanted something for college people.
Right.
So a younger demographic we were going after. So we came up with this sub brand, if you will, for the younger demographic. Well, as times keep changing, like you just said, the society we live in now is completely different than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
So as a company, you have to be able to move along and adapt to change and make those wise decisions as to what to do and what not to. I think recently Victoria's Secret actually put out their first non-photoshopped model also. That was a huge deal, because right now being authentic is huge. Well, in the 80s, being glamorous was huge. So, but it's a different world now. So you have to realize, what the pond you're playing in.
Right. And then other things that are going on, inclusivity, diversity. I mean, all of those things. Now, I mean, again, it's knowing who your market is. And if your market is, say, white CEO men, so, and let's be honest, that's where, a lot of CEOs are. They are, older white men. I mean, if that's really who you only want to market to, okay, embrace that, go with that. But, if you're looking at, say, CEOs in general, it is getting much more diverse. It's getting younger. We've got all these millennials that are starting their own incredibly successful companies, and so that's who are you marketing to? It's back to that again.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that's changed, we're doing a study of the ages here. Another one of the things that's changed is our educational system. When I was growing up, you had to go to college.
Right.
If you're going to be anybody, you have to go to college. Well, one of the reasons CEOs are younger nowadays is because they realize that that's not true.
Right.
Nowadays you have the school of the internet. As long as you learn something, it doesn't matter how you've learned it. When I was growing up, that wasn't true.
Right.
The only place to get higher education was in school.
And at certain universities.
Right,
I mean,
absolutely.
if you were a scientist, then you went to MIT.
Right.
Didn't matter that you could get maybe even a better degree somewhere else, but you wanted that MIT degree.
That's right, because it said something to people. And so because that has changed as well. And the other thing, just as quickly as 6 months ago, with the whole pandemic thing, all the schools went to online. Which just proved to the world that on campus is not necessary.
Right.
Wait and watch to see how that pans out for people.
Yeah. I mean, I've had friends that took classes at Harvard virtually. They didn't even care what they took. They just wanted to be able to say, oh my gosh, I've taken classes, from Harvard.
Yep, absolutely. And it's things like that are you have to keep your eye on the pulse of what's going on in the world.
Right.
Because things change and people don't like change. Business owners particularly do not like change. And keeping your ear to the ground, keeping your eye on the horizon, know what's coming, and being able to make that objective decision as to what you will and won't go with. That's part of being a business owner.
Right.
That's why not everybody does it.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was just thinking the other day, I was, watching TV again, and I don't remember who the product was for, but everybody in the commercial had masks on, and it was funny because this whole time I have thought, TV shows are going to TV shows, commercials, all things are going to regret that they filmed episodes that they had commercials with masks on, because unless they never show them again, we're going to look at that and go, okay, that's old, that's dated. And so, that's kind of one of those things where you have to weigh, okay, this is what's going on in the real world, but what are the ramifications? Now, clearly, I mean, there were obviously things that you needed to show that they were wearing masks and things like, or I like the commercials that said, in the tiny little print, these commercials were filmed using appropriate social distancing.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't care. And part of that is, I watch TV for escapism. I want to forget that, what's going on. But, so you have to be careful with the trends. I mean, that's the tricky thing.
I put off shooting several commercials because of the mask wearing thing. Because part of it, a lot, and everybody's on a different part of the scale. And I'm not going to get political with whether COVID was real or masks. Or
right. It was what it was.
I had some people that were extremely concerned and others that were not. But the bottom line is, regardless of where you were, if you were going to shoot a commercial during that time and have masks in it, you had to recognize that was a very temporary window. Now, when you show those commercials, it shows people, yes, I believe in taking care of our community, and I believe in all of that stuff. However, now or 6 months from now, because some places are still doing the mask thing, we're not in Georgia. Some places that are still doing it are fine. But eventually, when that goes away, nobody's going to want to see it.
Right.
So
we don't want to be reminded about it.
All the money you spent shooting that big documentary and that commercial that you made sure people had masks in is now not usable. The shelf life is it's gone.
Right.
So what I did during that time is find a way to work around having masks so that it could have a shelf life, or maybe shoot 2 versions of it,
right?
Or just postpone it. Now different parts.
Yeah, we did see. Speaking of retro, we saw old ads and things like that coming back again. Yep,
absolutely. Different parts of the world reacted to that, in different ways. Georgia. Because I believe your podcast is all over the place, right?
Yes, but I am here in Georgia. So.
Yes. Well, then our being told what to do with the pandemic was very limited, because we don't really like to put up with that.
Right.
So,
we never had a mask mandate, for example.
But other places they did. Other places still do. Some places they told people they had to wear 2. Legally, you had to. Here, if you had told somebody in the South that, we'd have been like, excuse me, what?
Not going to happen. No.
But it's, and you have to know your audience. You have to know where you are. A lot of the businesses here, even today, when all of that is just about rolled up in Georgia, there's still businesses that are closed or that make you wear a mask and all of that stuff. And it's because their headquarters is in California,
right,
or somewhere else. So they're making policy based on where their headquarters is, as opposed to where their locations are.
Right.
So all of that's part of navigating business. Business is it's a language, it's a skill. It's almost like religion. You have to figure out how you're going to navigate.
Right. Right. So, as we've been going through this, one of the things that I've been thinking is, how many people did we just scare off or totally confuse, because now they're thinking, okay, am I authentic? Am I unique? Or am I changing to be like them? Do I follow trends? Do I not follow trends? Oh my gosh. So, and I realize we don't have a lot of time left, but for somebody who just went, how do we guide them through this?
Well, to begin with, if you went through all that and we completely panicked you out because there's so many options,
buy the book.
There's a way to do it. There's a process that you go through that is going to be unique for your company.
Okay.
What Coca-Cola did and what you're going to do are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
Now, you can learn from them. You can learn from case studies and learn from what people did right and learn from what people did wrong. But your journey is going to be your own. However, the process is the same and your differences are within that process.
Right.
So,
and you call it the straight line marketing process.
Yep. And one of the things that I do in that process is I line up who you are. There's room if it's like this, this is the straight line, like a bar. There's room for wiggle room within it, but you don't go outside of it. Because if you go outside of it, you start wasting money. But that room inside is where you find your individuality, right? It's what's going to apply for me. So depending on what your business is, where you're located, who your target audience is, what you personally as a business owner will stand for. Now, publicly traded businesses are different. Then that's what the board stands for, which is more confusing because that's decision by committee. But as a business owner, what you want and what you think matters, So all of that is going to have an impact as well. So what you have to do is, yes, you can buy the book. Hey, by the way, because
Married to Marketing, a relationship guide to business.
Yep, it will walk you through what those steps are in a way that is not as business jargon oriented. Or you could go to straightlinemarketingprocess.com and I have a video series there that talks about it more from a traditional business standpoint. But if you go through those steps, you do it appropriately and you allow yourself to be an individual. And if you have somebody like me that's a consultant or an expert that walks along beside you, they can help you navigate it. You're not expected to do all of this on your own.
Right.
Really hard to grow a business and maintain a business and communicate a business and keep being innovative all at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And then have to do your own taxes. There's business law and the little business owner's brains went.
But everybody is where they are in their journey. It takes growth to get to certain places. Just learn as much as you can without feeling that you have to know everything. You want to know enough so that you're confident in the people that you use.
Right. Yeah, I remember years ago when I was in school. It was a program where the classes were mandated. We didn't get to pick and choose what we wanted. It was a very specific cohort program. And so one of the classes was on video production. Now, this is long enough ago that the video room had, it was this giant video thing with, 900 buttons on a panel and all sorts of stuff. And, and I remember, I stuck up my little hand and I said, I'm never going to have to do this. Why are you making me take this class? Right. Same reason with why we had to learn algebra. The professor looked at me and he said, good question. He said, you may never do it yourself, but you're going to manage someone who is, and you have to know enough to know if they're doing it right or wrong.
Yep. When I was in school, we had to take typing. On a
yes.
And we thought, I'm not going to be a secretary. Why do I have to know how to do this? Look at today. Everybody types. You even type on your phone with your thumbs. So typing has become a very good skill that I learned in eighth or ninth grade that I now use every single day.
Right.
So yeah. Education is a very positive thing, even if it's, like you said, just so you're smart about the decision you're making, even if you're not actually the one doing all the little details. A lot of leadership and management is knowing the big picture and being smart enough to pick those right people to put in the right places.
Yeah. Perfect. Or even just knowing which books to buy, which videos to watch, things like that, because Google can just confuse the living daylights out of you. So one of the right ones is, as we've been saying, people need to look at your information, buy the book, but how do people find you online and how do they connect with you?
Well, if you remember my name with the initial from the very beginning, if you look up B. Zachary Bennett, you will find me everywhere. I'm at bzacharybennett.com. All of my social media is related to B. Zachary Bennett. So it's facebook.com/B. Zachary Bennett. I'm at B. Zachary Bennett on Twitter. So yeah, Google B. Zachary Bennett. You will find me everywhere. My company is Reformation Productions. You're welcome to look that up as well, reformationproductions.com. And my podcast is Straight Shot Marketing Podcast, and we're everywhere that podcasts live. So if you want to hear more from me, I always have something to say.
Perfect. I love it. And as I said, the book was great. Took me a couple hours to read through it, and lots of great tips, and so that was fabulous. And then you do have a lot of good resources on your website, and so I encourage people to look those up, because whether we just confused you, or if you have just been confused, or maybe you're very successful, you could probably, there are things that you can tweak and make better. The biggest businesses in the world are continually rearranging things. Sometimes they're like Coke, they do the wrong thing. But you do things to continually make your business better. Otherwise, somebody else is going to run you over. Because they're going to come along. And so, it's always great to continue learning, to continue researching all of this.
Well, I have one of the things that I've done after I came out with this book. This book is very much written for people to understand on a very high level. After that, I came out with a workbook. So this is a companion piece for this, where you can take the big picture stuff in here and actually make it real to your own business with questions and that sort of thing. So a lot of times when I do my initial consultations, because I do not only the agency, but I also do consultant work as well. I'll sit down with people and work through this almost like it's a devotion book. And for their marriage, their business marriage, if you will. So it's almost like couples counseling, right? That's kind of how this works. So the people that, because I've had a lot of people, oh, I love your book. It makes so much sense. How do I apply it to me? Well, that's where this comes in.
Perfect. I love it. Well, this has been a great discussion. And, like I said, it gets back to my roots. And so that's what I love. But do you have any final thoughts for everybody?
No, it's just being a business owner is hard. Stay out there, do what you can, and don't lose faith. I believe in the American dream. I believe in capitalism in its purest form. And if you are in America, at least, if you work hard enough, you can do anything you want to do. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But you're going to have to put in the work. You're going to have to do the homework. You just need somebody to help you know what those things are, which is what education is for.
Perfect. I love it. Well, this really has been fantastic. And I hope that people, learn something from it. I definitely did. And so, that's always great fun. But I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a fascinating discussion with B. Zachary Bennett. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thanks.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.